Hello. Donut, anyone? Of course, the great thing is about this sort of donut compared to the other sort is this is much less fattening and much easier to make. You just build it up to maximum revs and then just sit back, enjoy the ride. That way.
In this video, I'm going to teach you how to drive fast. I'll explain how to do a handbrake turn, how to power slide. I'll show you the quickest way to get round a corner and how best to stop when things go wrong.
The only deal is this. You mustn't try any of this tyre burning stuff at home because you're going to mess up your carpet and you're going to crash into your coffee table. Okay?
This is the only formal driver training that most of us ever have. We learn how to make the indicators work and how to make the car move. Learning how to reverse round a corner is on the curriculum too, which is handy for parking, but nowhere near as handy as this. Meet Russ Swift.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So how do you do it? Well, how do you do a handbrake turn, first of all?
You turn in to shift the momentum of the car, then you pull the handbrake on. With a front-wheel drive car, you needn't dip the clutch, but with a rear-wheel drive, you do.
Yeah.
Or you'll stall it. But,
and that's it?
That's it.
And you have to, presumably, to get in a gap like this, you have to have a very precise point where you pull it on.
It's just practice. It's all done instinctively when you get in a gap like this.
And what's your record?
I park in a space 33 centimetres longer than the car, which gives me about 6.5 inches front, 6.5 inches rear.
That's it?
That's it.
Unbelievable. Of course, you made your name in the Montego ad years ago, didn't you?
14 years ago. Yeah.
Is it 14 years ago, that?
Of course, all the close-ups were done by an actor, but the driving, that was all Russ's.
And here I am in a Montego, about to try it for myself. Oh, I do not know how he does it.
Of course, there is another way of getting the back end of the car to slide. Find yourself something with rear-wheel drive, even something blancmangy like this BMW Z8.
Then, when you're going really fast round a corner, accelerate. Or, if you prefer, when you're going really fast round a corner, lift off. The effect is exactly the same. The back is going to slide round. Now, once it starts to slide, you've got to be ready to catch it by feeding in what's called some opposite lock, steering the other way. There is, however, another problem. What to do with the throttle? Well, if you use too much, this is going to happen. And if you use too little, this is going to happen. hard car to do this in. So you've got to get it exactly right, throttle exactly right, steering exactly right. And then you can have an absolute riot, even in a big American heavyweight cruiser like this one. Until eventually you're going to overcook it, you're going to crash. Then you're going to start all over again.
The trouble with driving like that, though, is that after 10 minutes, your rear tyres will look like that. The tread will be completely torn off. And that's with just 400 horsepower. So imagine what happens if you have 580. In theory, all you need to do a power slide is a car with rear-wheel drive. So, can we power slide a Smart without spinning it? In fact, can we power slide a Smart at all? No. It would seem that you need rather more than 1 brake horsepower. But you don't need to go bonkers. You don't, for instance, need a TVR Tuscan R. You don't need a Maserati 3200. You don't need a Ferrari 355. No, in fact, all you need is one of these. This is a Noble M12 GTO, and in many ways it's a bit of a hodgepodge. The plastic body is made in South Africa by a company that builds replica Cobras for the American market. It's then flown, yes, flown to Britain, where a team of 15 people fit it with the V6 engine from a Ford Mondeo. However, it's no ordinary Ford Mondeo engine. Listen. Every gear change sounds like 2 Darth Vaders shouting at one another. That's because it's fitted with 2 turbochargers, and that means 310 brake horsepower, and that means 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Move over, McLaren F1. Don't think, however, it's all brute force and ignorance. It isn't. This dashboard is beautifully finished. I've got air conditioning, there's tons of space. It's a very well thought out car. It's good looking too. With that huge rear spoiler, there is naked aggression. But there's daintiness too. It is marvellous. But it's not the looks that impress most, or the price, even though it's only £40,000. No, the best thing about this car is the chassis. Really and truly, it's hard to know where to start the eulogising. I mean, the ride is absolutely fabulous. You think, ooh, it's going to be soft, it's going to be yogurty through the corners, and it just isn't. Unlike the Z8, where you're working away at the controls the whole time, this is just so easy, so relaxed and so communicative. You know exactly what the back end's up to, almost before it does it. I cannot begin to tell you how good this car is. However, be aware that while power sliding may look good, it's not the best way round a corner. You're scrubbing off too much speed. If you want to go really fast, you have to keep the back wheels in line with those in front. So theoretically, it doesn't matter what wheel drive you go for.
The thing with rear-wheel drive is that the wheels at the rear provide the propulsion and the ones at the front do the steering. That's a nice balance. Now with front-wheel drive, the front wheels do the steering and provide the propulsion. The back ones are only there to stop the back trailing along the ground and all the sparks. Now the advantage of this system is that it saves weight and it's cheap. But there is a limit to how much power you can put through the front wheels. It's around about 220 brake horsepower. However, the amount of power going through the wheels is the least of my problems today.
This is a track day, the latest phenomena to hit the British performance car scene. The variety of cars here is amazing. There are Formula One cars, there are touring cars and historic cars, there are road cars. It's a potpourri of petrol power.
So, we've got the Maserati 250F, which Fangio used to win the 1957 German Grand Prix, possibly the best motor race of all time. Next to it is a Maserati Barchetta, only 17 of those made. Then there's another Maserati 250F, the last one ever made, a Porsche 911 GT, and over here, the fastest Mini in the world, with a 300 horsepower Vauxhall touring car engine in it. Look at this lot. Got a supercharged Lotus 111S, parked next to a D-Type Jaguar. Then you've got a Lotus 340R, Lotus 23B from the early 60s, and over here, a Formula One car. You know something? I think I've brought a knife to a gunfight.
This is BMW's first attempt at front-wheel drive. Of course, when Mercedes made the switch with the A-Class, they ended up with a car that cornered on its roof. So let's see how the Mini Cooper S gets on.
Faint whine from the supercharger, which is nice. Puts you in mind of the whine you used to get from the original Mini's gearbox.
The ride is like the old car too. There's a strange bobbing sensation as you go along. But you also get the old car's turn-in, the same go-kart responses. And that's great.
I just have one tiny criticism. The engine is very, very muscular, pulls well. I could do with just a little less grunt and a bit more power. A bit more in keeping with the car somehow. Actually, I could do with a lot more power. I'm being completely destroyed out here. I've ever been on a track in a Mini against Formula One cars. Coming up behind a right old collection of Beamers and Porsches and heavens knows what here. Surely I'm not going to be able to take them in my Mini, am I? RS Porsche. An accident waiting to happen here, and it would be quite an expensive one. I'm going to have to let me pass, sunshine. Just going to let me pass. It's not bad taking a Porsche RS. I'm feeling quite good about that. I mean, we're not racing, obviously, but quite a nice feeling.
I spent most of the day staring into my rear-view mirror, looking out for fast stuff bearing down on me. But once I did look where I was going, and it nearly ended in tears. chap in the Ferrari probably doesn't think so, but this Mini is a gem. It's a wonderful car to take to a track day. But then, truth be told, any car is good at a track day. You should try one. They're held at most British racetracks and cost around £150.
But then there are lots of different sorts of track days.
This is a Ferrari track day, which is being held at Jonathan Palmer's Bedford Autodrome. There are lots of rules, which is odd when everyone here is grown up enough to have their own Ferrari. But I suppose there have to be.
Now, we have been told if we spin off on the first lap, we will be black flagged and ejected for the day. We have to go nice and steadily. But I've now completed my first lap, so here we go. This is such a good car, you know. People say the 360 is better, but it's heavier, it's twitchier. 355 still has it for me. Oh dear, we've got a 550 here with its hazard warning lights. What's the matter with that? Oh my word, what's the point of coming to a track day, man? You could drive like that down Basingstoke High Street. 40 miles an hour. Don't buy yourself a Daewoo. Of course, the absolutely lovely thing about this is no sleeping policemen, no policemen of any sort, in fact. No speed cameras. And this, I guess, is the future of motoring. Driving hard and fast for hours and hours and hours, and ending up right back where you started from.
But there is a way round the problem. This is the new Range Rover, probably the best car money can buy. It has the interior appointments of a small palace, and though it may have been born on the farm, it's all diamonds and tiaras now. Inside, its heater comes on automatically on cold mornings. It has a television. It is the last word in luxury. But then it's more than a poser's pouch. Under the bonnet, there's a 4.4-litre V8 engine, 262 brake horsepower and 325 pounds-feet of torque. It's the same unit you get in a BMW X5, but unlike the X5, this is a real earth mover.
But the best thing about the new Range Rover, from my point of view, is that this towing eye on the back is designed to withstand a 5-ton yank. So, chain attached, no need to worry about four-wheel drive, that's permanent. I think I'll just slide it into low range and
Again, don't try this at home. You haven't got a speed camera at home. You need to go out to find one. They're mostly on deserted roads behind a bush.
The only problem with the Range Rover is the sheer size of the thing. I reckon that petrol model will probably cost getting on for £3 a mile to run. So from here to London, 60 miles away, that's 180 quid. It's hard to think of a helicopter that would cost that much, leave alone another car.
But let's not forget the Beckham-mobile, the Bentley Enage T. You don't need a lot of money to run this car, you need a lot of staff to run it for you.
I know this video is all about how to drive, but I want to take a moment now to talk about what to drive once you've mastered it. It takes 7 hours to build a smart car and 47 hours to build a Porsche 911 Turbo. So how long do you suppose it takes to make one of these? No, I'm afraid you're completely wrong. It takes 450 hours. If you want a two-door Continental, that's 650 hours. Simply to carve and polish the dashboard alone takes 3 times longer than it does to build an entire Porsche.
You might have assumed when Volkswagen took control of Bentley that all this craftsmanship would be ditched, but no. And more, they've even thrown away the BMW engine and brought the old British 6 3/4 litre warhorse back from the dead.
And they've fitted it with a couple of turbochargers, so this big Brit Bruiser absolutely flies. 0 to 60 takes 6.5 seconds. Top speed? God knows. The most amazing thing is, though, that even though you've got all this power and all this torque and all this weight, I've no idea how much it does weigh, but I'd say 2.5 tons minimum, and yet, even with the traction control turned off, it's just so easy to drive. I love this car.
The Enage picks up the baton dropped by the old Aston Martin Vantage and uses it to club the competition to death.
It's not perfect by any means. This gear lever is far too, see what I mean, imprecise and wobbly. This opens every time you put your arm on it. This is all far too messy, and this is too German. At £168,000, it's not what you'd call cheap either, but it is, what's the word? Magnificent. Ordinarily, I prefer small, light, high-powered cars, but I do have the utmost respect for big, heavy, torquey ones like this as well. I love their un-PC, wanton consumption. But there is one problem with fat boy cars like this. Trying to make them stop.
Now, in all my videos, we've raced cars from 0 to 60. But in this one, we're going to do something a little more important.
What I'm going to do is race these 3 cars, the Ford Anglia, the Ford Focus and the Range Rover, from 60 to 0. They're all going to come barreling down the runway at 60 miles an hour, and when they get to this line in the concrete, they're going to jam on their brakes. Now, the highway code says they should be stationary by the time they reach that 60 sign down there, 55 metres away. So let's see what happens.
It took us a mile or so to get sorted out. It's hard to accelerate as slowly as an Anglia. But eventually, after an hour or so, we were all doing 60, and as we crossed the line, we braked. It'd be quicker to let the Anglia run out of petrol.
So the Focus pulled up in 29 metres, and that's 26 metres shorter than it says it'll take in the highway code. It's also about the width of a zebra crossing shorter than it took the Range Rover to stop. Look at the Anglia. Oh, I think things have moved on. And I also think it's time the highway code was rewritten.
One of the most dramatic ways you can improve the performance of a car without complicated engineering work is by fitting better tyres. This Renault has front-wheel drive, 172 brake horsepower, top speed of 134, and best of all, a former F1 driver at the wheel, Jonathan Palmer.
So let's see how fast he goes round this little handling circuit on the car's standard tyres. Oi, back up a bit. Cheat. Stop. 3, 2, 1, go.
So we're off in the Clio 172.
with the standard tyres, an Avon tyre, up to second gear, 70 miles an hour. Let's leave it on the rev limiter, on the brakes. This is quite a tight left-hander here, and about 30 miles an hour through the middle of that. And a bit of understeer there, front running wide. I've got to keep it tight through this next right-hander, and then through this slalom section. Too much power for the grip of the tyres, and the front runs out wide, as is happening now. Right down to second gear, way well wide on that. More understeer again, but overall this Clio handles really well. We're keeping it tucked in tightly. There it is. And it felt pretty good.
And it was pretty good. A lap of 49.42 seconds. So let's see what happens when we fit the same car with some remolds.
So now off on the budget tyres. And again, we come up to the first left-hand corner. 60 miles an hour, hard on the brakes, and we turn it away! Well wide there. Definitely not as much grip on the front end. We missed the apex there. That'll be a little bit of time. But third gear. Let's see what happens on a faster corner. Turning it again early this time, and I have got a load of lock on, and we are all over the place. But nevertheless, let's get the car back online. And a lot of lock going on here. We are certainly seeing a bit of scrappy driving here, but then I don't have the grip.
50.6 seconds. That's over a second slower. So now let's fit the car with some performance rubber.
So we're now on the sports tyre, and already traction felt better off the line. So let's go into this left-hand hairpin. Significantly more grip. Earlier on the power now, not the sliding. We didn't run out wide from the corner as I did before, into third gear. I'm feeling more confident now. Let's hope it's not misplaced, and it's not at all. More precise, turn-in's better, but also the grip level is higher, and I can really place the car with a lot more precision. And very little understeer at all.
48.3 seconds. That's a second faster than the standard boots and 2 seconds faster than the budget wellies.
Now, these are all the same size tyres, aren't they?
Yes, and what's interesting is that these are all, they're 16-inch diameter, but they're also very low profile.
But if you went even lower and wider, it would have even more speed on a dry track like this, wouldn't it?
It would, but short of going to a motor racing tyre, you couldn't do that. We are running, all of these tyres are the lowest profile that you can really run on the road.
The essence of it is, though, the more rubber on the road, the more grip you've got.
Correct.
And better braking.
Yeah. Traction, braking, grip, all the way around. But the payoff normally is poorer ride quality.
Who cares about ride?
On a Clio 172, not a lot.
Big, expensive, square-edge tyres are better all round. Yes, the ride is worse, and yes, they don't last as long, but you will stop more quickly, and that's great. But no one else will.
So, what can you do about that? What do you do if you've got a truck on your tailgate and you need to stop in a hurry? Well, nothing really. You just have to hope you're in a Volvo. Except, of course, if you're in a Volvo, that makes you a Volvo driver. And the trucker's not going to like you very much.
Here's why. If you carve him up and he needs to slow down, it'll take forever for him to get back up to speed again.
Okay, let me show you what a truck driver has to go through every time you carve him up, right? We're stationary. Clutch in, into one low, and we're off. And already it's time to change into one high. There we go. And now it's time to change into two low, two high, three low, three high, four low. So now we move this lever up, which means that what was first is now fifth. And we're up to 12 miles an hour. Remember, a truck can only economically rev from about 750 RPM to about 1600 RPM. Then he's got to change gear. He's got this tiny little rev band. Heavens, 25 miles an hour after about 15 minutes. Don't ever carve a truck driver up, okay? Never. Promise yourself you'll never do it. So, trucks then. You can't do three-point turns in them, it's impossible. You need a degree in quantum physics just to change gear. And can you imagine driving from London to Istanbul in something that's limited to 56 miles an hour? Mind you, I suppose you could always take the limiter off.
This is the fastest racing truck in Europe. Its engine may only have 6 cylinders, but there are 12 litres and a turbo, which equates to 1,000 brake horsepower.
For once, however, it isn't the power that's the big story. This truck is limited to 100 miles an hour in a race. See, if it went any faster than that, the barriers at most racetracks wouldn't be strong enough to stop it. It weighs nearly 6 tons, so perhaps we shouldn't be surprised to find that it does one mile to the gallon. One of you may be wondering, does this man have an HGV license? Well, in a word, no. Apparently, if you really stick it into a corner, you can make it power slide. The post office should get some lorries like this. They'll be able to keep up with email then. I like it. But do I like it more than a sports car?
This is a Porsche Boxster, widely regarded to be about the best of today's mid-range convertibles. It offers nicely balanced handling, a rasp from the exhaust, and even some grown-up power too. And you can enjoy all of it because of the traction control and the anti-lock brakes.
What this car is saying to you is this: you have a very small human brain and you may crash. So I shall use my enormous car brain to make sure that you don't. Now I know that you can turn the traction control off, but really this should be called the Porsche nanny state.
That's where this comes in. It's the new TVR Tamora, the prettiest car ever to come out of Blackpool. And I don't mean by that to damn it with faint praise. It really is a sensational looking thing.
It's a bit tricky when you get to the limit, but everything's relative, and I have to say, compared to any other TVR I've driven, this is a cinch. It really is.
It has huge tyres on 17-inch rims. There's a rear diffuser to keep it on the ground as you climb past 170. And you can climb past 170 because under the bonnet there's the same 3.6-litre straight-six that helps TVR to victory in all the acceleration tests I do on these videos. So, what's this one going to beat? What lamb shall we slaughter? Oh good, the Boxster S. It is hugely fast.
So there we are, England versus Germany, and I'd call that 5-1. But then what do you expect? I mean, the engine in this car produces 360 horsepower, and the whole car only weighs 1,060 kilograms, so that works out at 330 brake horsepower per tonne. And to put that in perspective, a Porsche 911 Turbo only develops 276 brake horsepower per tonne. I mean, the thing is, though, this car comes with no driver aids at all. No anti-lock brakes, no traction control, no airbags. It assumes that you can drive and that you can drive well. Which is why I'm going to stop now, because imagine what would happen if I went mad.
This is the ultimate TVR, the £75,000 Tuscan R. Extreme Trevor. 440 brake horsepower in a car that weighs just a tonne.
Now, I could go on at this point to talk about the steel chassis, the aluminium honeycomb floor, the body which is made entirely from carbon fibre, or maybe even these industrial welds on the dashboard. But I keep being drawn back to that little figure, that 440 horsepower, in a car that weighs a tonne that has a drag coefficient of 0.32. Because you see, if you add that lot together, you end up with a top speed of 215 miles an hour.
This is the thing. Some cars are too scary to drive fast. The fear of dying means you forget what you're doing, so you end up making a mess of it. Like this, in fact. So, what's happening here? Why, it's our old friend Russ Swift and a Nova bicycle.
How on earth are you doing that?
Just like riding a bike, Jeremy.
You what?
It's just like riding a bike.
Well, I know it's like riding a bike, but why doesn't it just tipple over?
It does, unless I steer into whichever way it's falling. It's going to tip over, so I'm reacting with steering all the time to keep it on the point of balance.
But I mean, will it work if you go faster?
Yes, it's like...
Go on then, see what happens. I've got to have a go at that. I'm up. Oh, I'm up. I've got it. This is easy.
Oh dear. Let's move on.
Did you know that the world record for donuts is 22 in a minute? That's about 1 every 3 seconds. And here's what I reckon. I reckon Russ Swift could beat that. Ladies and gentlemen, please silence for the fastest donuts in the world.
He's doing one circuit every 2.2 seconds, but he can't keep it up for a minute and get the world record because the G-forces would cause him to black out.
But the thing is that driving well, driving really well, is hard. And if you can't be bothered to learn, the best thing you can do is buy a car which glosses over your ham fists and flatters your good points. A car like this one, for instance.
Welcome to the Mitsubishi Evo 7, the latest and cleverest of the Evo family. The engine is still 2 litres, still turbocharged, but now with 305 brake horsepower.
This particular model is called the FQ300. Now, I know that Q stands for quick, but I don't know what the F stands for. Oh no, wait a minute. I do now.
And not just quick in a straight line. Because this is a no-frills, maximum thrills refugee from the world's rally stages. It is staggering through the bends.
Did you know that cars yaw? No, I didn't either, but apparently they do, and apparently it's a bad thing, which is why this car has active yaw control. It also has an active differential. Now, I've read all the bump, I've talked to the engineers, and I cannot for the life of me work out why an active differential is better than a normal viscous diff. It is, though. I think the most amazing thing about an Evo 7 is that when you really have overdone it, the laws of physics have got hold of you and they're flinging you toward a tree. In a normal car, you'd go, "Bah, I'm going to die, but in this you just go, oh no, I'm going to have to slow down a bit.
This car was built and conceived with one purpose. Its four-wheel drive system, its active diff, its active yaw, its weight distribution. Everything is designed to make it go round corners as quickly as is mechanically possible. So if you're not Colin McRae or Michael Schumacher and you still want to go fast, this is the car to buy. It's utterly brilliant, apart from one thing. It's a bit slow. This Ford RS200 once went from 0 to 100, then back to 0 again in 12.6 seconds. It was a world record.
But then the owner decided he wanted to go a little bit more quickly. So he changed the engine management system and he fitted a much, much bigger turbo. The end result is 703 brake horsepower and power like you simply wouldn't believe. This acceleration is absolutely mind-blowing. Of course, it's still an RS200. The brakes are appalling. And that gearbox, they said it was like a tractor's, but that's being unfair to tractors, really. And I can never lose sight of the fact that the RS200 was always a tricky car to drive. It's never really feels like you're in control. Here comes the power. Here it, oh, wow, that's awesome.
Now, I think there are three reasons why that accident happened. Firstly, the RS200 has a very primitive 50-50 torque split. Secondly, it has a very short wheelbase. And thirdly, and I think most importantly, it was my fault. So what I'm going to do now is try something faster. This started out in life as a standard Nissan Skyline R33. But then a Japanese tuning company spent £150,000 on the engine. So it now develops 1,000 brake horsepower. That's 200 more than a Formula One car.
It's not some fragile racing car either. In the last 5 years since it was built, the owner tells me it's never once broken down. And it's full of luxuries too. Leather seats, carpets, it's all very civilized. And yet there is something a bit odd. Like, for instance, I've got 3 boost gauges down there in the glove box. I've got another one here. I've got a water temperature for the front of the engine, a water temperature for the back of the engine, and a water temperature for the middle of the engine. I've got exhaust temperature gauges. I've got an oil temperature gauge. I've got an oil pressure gauge. Overkill, do you think? I don't. You see, that is the engine.
And these things here, well, they're the turbochargers. And look at the size of them. Could suck leaves off the pavement as you drove by with those. Amazing. Ooh, and look. I'm on a drag strip. This astonishing car does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, 0 to 190 in 12 seconds. Its sister car has been timed at 234 miles an hour.
I thought that RS200 was fast, but this is absolutely astonishing. And how you're supposed to keep your eye on all these gauges when, whoa, you're coming up to a corner and you know you're going to understeer around it. That locking rear diff does not seem to be doing its job. Whoa. And you know you've got 1,000 horsepower. You're going to burst out if you get it wrong. Ooh, you need to be awake. It's like driving an explosion. It really is just Semtex with a steering wheel. Now, if you want to buy this car, it's currently for sale at £50,000, and that's amazing value because if you think about it, it cost 3 times more than that to build. So, there we are. The most powerful car on the roads in Britain today. And I can think of no better place to finish. Goodbye. Oh, hang on a minute. It's a tradition in these videos that I destroy some kind of awful car, and look, this Montego still works. So let's see if we can just get the Nova off it. Excellent. Actually, you know, I'm getting too old for any more of this wanton destruction. Oh no! Beam me up, Scotty. And that really is it. See you next time. Well, almost. Remember that handbrake manoeuvre? First time I tried it. Lucky or what?